Good evening. This is the Auburn Finance Committee for April 2nd, 2025. It's 5:30 PM. Allow me to read our remote participation script. This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Finance Committee is being conducted both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely by telephone, it's 1-786-535-3211 with an access code of 991-599-357. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/991-599-357. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda participating remotely are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Michael Marshall.
Here.
Patrick Jones.
Here.
Stephen Concilio.
Here.
Andrew Shar.
Here.
Thank you. Town officials and employees participating. CFO Town Accountant Karen Harnois.
Here.
And Administrative Assistant Danielle Chamberlain-Roberts.
Here.
Okay, very good. Tonight's agenda, we have two departments here to present budgets. We'll go over the CIP, and we have a single transfer which we'll cover first. Michael, do you want to come up for this single transfer? Mr. Marino? So we have a transfer, interdepartment transfer coming from the HR generalist salary, amount requested $9,600. Going to the IT hardware account. The reason given on the transfer is to purchase a server for employees to access the employee self-service. Mike, you want to give us some insight into this one?
Yeah, I think I'm going to need Karen's help with this one because she knows the program better than I do. As far as what I need, we need to purchase a physical server that'll act as a gateway so people can access the self-service program from outside of our network here. So right now, the police don't have access to it. The schools don't have access to it. The library has very limited access to it. So this would allow those people, as well as, being outside, like at home, being able to access it as well.
Through the chair, if I could, so the employee self-service works with Munis. So what we're trying to get away from is printed check stubs so that the employees can go into the employee self-service and access electronic versions of that, as well as their W-2s, their payroll transaction histories. So we're moving towards that. And that's why we need the server to keep moving towards the end goal on that, is full implementation.
Questions? Michael?
Is the current program hosted on-prem?
Yes, it
The
is.
server is just acting as sort of like the buffer to allow for remote access?
Yep, exactly, yep.
Why couldn't you just, this strikes me not as a very heavy-duty usage thing. So.
No, because first of all, it's not a cloud service, so we checked into that. It does need to be hosted on our end to connect to our servers. The reason why it can't be used on the existing servers is because it's being open to the public. It needs to be separated from our existing servers to prevent any unauthorized access. Yes, that also allows us, we were talking about some other programs in the future, and that will allow us to utilize those as well. So we built it so it could utilize other programs that we're looking at getting in the future.
So that actually was where I was going. So can you just give me a little interpretations for confidence that because we have a server and we're using Munis, which is an integrated software, into our server, what's the protection?
Yeah, so this is, it's part of the Munis programs, so it accesses our internal servers on only specific ports that they allow. Plus, being a physical server, we can put it outside of our network into what's called a DMZ to allow only specific access from that server to our servers and not allow outside access to get through.
So is it sort of a dumping ground? So it goes to Munis, it takes the information it needs, it brings it to the server, the person can see it, and there's really no interaction. It's just really working as a liaison.
Basically, yes.
Thank you. That's sort of where I was heading. Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? And just, again, I think I asked you the cloud-based stuff for the last meeting. Munis does not have a component to do it, or is just not able to do it because of security?
We did check into that with them. They call it a cloud version, but you still need this server because our servers are internal, I believe it is, that we need this physical like gateway basically between the two.
My suspicion is that even if we went to a cloud-based version of Munis, it would only be accessible in this building on this network, and so we'd still probably need, is that where you're getting?
That's basically what it came down to when I was speaking to them about it. We still needed this access. Right.
And without, okay.
And not speaking out, $10,000 for a server strikes me as probably less than whatever, typically less than most cloud subscriptions are going to cost me.
Correct, yeah, especially over time.
I understand that there's maintenance costs and everything else, but
Okay. Any additional questions?
So we're partially automated, and this is going to move that process along. When we add this server, would you say we're 75% there? Would you say we're 65% there? Would you say we're 90% there?
Well, this will give everyone the access. As for the departments entering their payroll, we're a little bit less than that going forward. We just have just a few departments, but we're still working on that.
Sure, great, okay.
Based on that question, so you said police and fire currently don't have access. What percentage of our employees approximately that this will give them access to?
in schools.
Schools? I'm sorry,
And schools.
police and schools would be the two big ones. School, about, any idea what percentage of our employees that would represent?
That would give everybody access.
So we're probably 50% currently have access to self-serve and the other 50% do not?
Well, with all of these school employees, it's probably more than 50% that do not right now.
And through those automation of those systems, there are efficiencies gained from people being able to do their own payroll entries and probably able to do some deduction type things, right? They just have those components in Munis that they can change their deductions and things of that nature.
Correct, and we've also been receiving a few calls for employees not having, or they can't locate their W-2s, so that as well, they'll always be able to have access to that
Self-access.
information.
I was just going to ask that, do we have a legal obligation to supply at least one W-2 through the mail, and then if they want something other than that, they can use the service? Or going forward, are we saying to our employees, we're not going to mail out a W-2 this year or get one to you, you're going to be responsible to go get it yourself? Because I believe we still have an obligation to prove that we've given them their W-2.
It is a very good question. I'll have to look into that one, but at least they'll be able to go in
Just don't want to
if they don't.
mislead or have people think that they're going to eliminate some of the manual entry. They can use it as a resource, like if I get paid in a month from now, all of a sudden I need something because I'm closing on a house, I can go out and access some information. But when it comes to December 31st and it comes to the federal and the state tax reporting requirements, I believe we have an obligation to, there's still some expense that we have no control over because it's driven by law.
I think there is an opt-out option to
Yes.
that. I think the option to go paperless, I think is there. I know from the state side, but I think you're right. I think if they don't choose that option, I think that we're required to
Can't make
provide
it
the paper.
Right, you can't make it
Most
the
people
default.
do, only
Right.
because you can get it quicker on the self-serve applications than you can waiting for it to come in the mail. Most people are hoping to get their taxes in if you're expecting a refund. Expected to pay, maybe wait till the end. Any other questions on this one? Okay, do we have any motions?
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the $9,600 for the IT hardware. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mike. Okay, first up on the agenda is the Youth Commission. And I see we've got some representatives and some support representatives. How are you, sir?
Very good. Normal Flash, the chairman of the Auburn Youth Commission. I have Mike Vila, the president of the Auburn Youth and Family Services, and Sally D'Angelo. He's also here. They help me out with the figures and stuff. I just want to come, and we had met with Ed before he retired, and we talked about our budget and stuff. And I think I do this every year, as long as you've been here. When I come, we appreciate the increase because we're getting a 2.5. But again, Sally and Mike got some figures together as far as what the actual cost is for the services that they provide through the contract that we actually have with Auburn Youth and Family Services in the town. So, I mean, at some point I would like to ask, and Sally and Mike are here to answer any questions or help you with some of the numbers in here. But as you can see, I believe you guys got a sheet of paper from Sally, and the actual cost of the services is $295,738. So we've made leaps and bounds to get closer to that over the year. And there were a few years where we did get a substantially higher increase, but I'm going to be here for the spring, and for the regular town meeting and stuff. To get to 2.5 is good, but I still would like to probably at the fall meeting come forward again, and I'll make a presentation to the town manager to get additional funding to try to get it closer to what the actual costs are. Sally and Mike can answer. They do fundraising. They have different things. They have, grants that they can get, and, that they are diligent and, looking for. But again, the cost far exceeds what we give. So we agreed that the 2.5% increase to the 224,488 is good, because that's the numbers that I have. I would like to come forward in the fall and see if we can get some additional funding to help bring us closer, if not completely close the gap to where we need to be. And, with the new administration, didn't really want to push it for the the regular fall meeting, but it is always constantly there. You can, talk, they work very well with the Auburn Public Schools, and they also work well with the Auburn Police Department, and always have. And the Finance Committee has always been very acceptable to what our requests are. They have been, and, they have increased it. But again, where we're getting the 2.5, that'd be good, but I would like to let you know that I am going to put in a request probably in the fall to see if we can get, because we'll know better where the financial situation is in town, and hopefully we can increase it at that point. But Mike and Sally are here to answer any questions, or
I think we will in a moment, but just before we get to, can you explain, that we have at least one new member who hasn't been through this, can you explain, I know when I first started, it wasn't super clear, you're the Auburn Youth Commission, which is a town
it's a
commission.
town volunteer
Can
commission.
you explain the relationship between the commission and Auburn Youth and Family Services?
But our commission, when I first got on it, it's probably been 20 years ago now, there was a contract with Auburn Youth and Family Services to provide certain things to the town, and we were the ones that implemented the contract for the town. And at that point, we have discussions with Auburn Youth and Family Services to see what they were. We've changed it over the years. Earlier when we were there, they had certain money for high school, middle school. They addressed all of them. Now there's pretty much a lump sum to provide services across the board for any school. And then they have other services that they will provide and that they're required to do. There's 5 or 6 things that are in the contract that they go through. And that's basically what we're doing, is we meet, we discuss and go over the contract. We look to see if there's any changes. And at that point, we present it to the town manager and to Sally so that they can approve. Then they have to sign it and approve that they agree to the contract. Sally, since I've been here, when I first started, it was pretty close. The costs were relatively less than they are now, but with the cost of counseling going on and with the increase and the number, I mean, you sit there and we'll have 400 hours, 500 hours contracted that they have to work out. Regularly, if you look at the sheet they give out, they exceed that by quite a few on a couple categories. Because if a family needs counseling, they're not going to turn them away. And where they're providing those services, they're going to continue to provide those services. And we've agreed to that, and we meet when we get closer. Like I said, there was a pretty good jump. So we have to, for next year, we're going to have to sit down and agree to a contract, probably with numbers that are close to what are actually being used at the time. And at that point, it would be a significant request to bring us up to those numbers. Again, for when the numbers started going up based on the hours and things that were going on, we always came forward and we always got small increases, but it was never enough. We've never closed that gap completely. So at some point, where the hours may or may not balance out, whatever we have to do, we do. I think as a town, where they are providing that service to us, we should at least try to pay for the cost of the services that they are providing.
Any questions? Certainly, we can have Sally and Mike come up if you have questions relative to the Auburn Youth and Family and the services they provide relative to the budget. Any particular questions?
I have kind of a curious question, not necessarily about the budget, but because I used to be on the housing board, and as I recall, the building is owned by housing, but I don't actually remember on our financials.
Building is owned by the town.
Is it because the state?
Pay $1 in your rent to the town. The building is the town.
Sally, could you just come up to the mic just so at home they can, thank you.
So we are really lucky, but years ago, we got a grant through the Department of Housing and Community Development, which went to the town to build that facility, and we moved in 2001. And the building is owned by the town, which we're really lucky, and we pay $1 a year to be inside the building for all our programs and services. The Housing Authority leases the land to the town, so the Housing Authority leases that land. We have a lease. We take care of the utilities. There is a lease, and in the lease, we take care of the stuff inside the building. So, if something little breaks, we pay for that. We take care of the utilities. If we have a plumbing problem, we take care, of calling the plumber. So we've been, we take care of painting and keeping it up on the inside. So we do that. But we're very fortunate. The town also provides through the Department of Public Works. They provide lots of services for us. They help with mowing and plowing. And, we're just very, very lucky. We feel very blessed.
You also get state funding as well as, you must have more money than what is.
We apply for, any grant we can possibly get. I recently got, right now, we were very lucky to get some of the ARPA money from the town, which is paying for our most busy service, which is food insecurity. So we're using up the rest of that money. I think we had $60,000 this year, and we're going to definitely use all of it. And so we're looking how we're going to replace that funds to keep that service going. The board has a strategic plan, and we're working on other avenues. But we apply for grants, we get some fees for services. We do a lot of fundraising. We just had 2 events this year. One was a Taste of Auburn, that was in the fall, and that was kind of a new event for us because we used to use Chuck's and have our wine tasting. And then we just recently had a casino night where a lot of town departments came and volunteered to be dealers and things like that. We did pretty well on that. Unfortunately, those kinds of events are not going to sustain you, though. You have to look for a very diverse revenue. In our board, we work very hard on a strategic plan to kind of figure out where we're going in the future. But we really appreciate everything we get from the town. We love working with the schools. We love doing the services. But those those costs, Sonia, those cost overages are just for two aspects of the contract that we have with the Youth Commission. One is for the 150 hours that we do at Auburn Youth and Family Services, where we have other families come in that need counseling. And then your school hours, we have 500 school hours that we do for all of the Auburn Public Schools. And I do believe you also have a letter from Dr. Chamberlain kind of talking about our services in your packet tonight.
And they do provide, I mean, this is just a contracted services we're talking about. They are an organization that does do counseling and everything outside and the normal, that they do normally, that the fundraising help usually has to go toward helping with that too, so.
I would just, questions, that this is obviously going to be a tight year in terms of money, right? And,
Right.
So we've been asking pretty much every department that comes in, not so much for this year, but for future years, to start thinking about gathering statistical data for us. And, you know, Dr. Chamberlain's letter is very complimentary, and we know of the great work you do and the benefits of providing the services to the students, and that we've talked overall benefits with, you know, children staying out of trouble, and that impacts, you know, positively impacts the police budget and, you know, fire budget, and it goes beyond the services provided. But I guess I would just ask for future, not necessarily for tonight, but future to come in, you know, how many students were served, how many, there's a little bit here in terms of hours for counseling, but how many programs were delivered, how many after school, how many summer, how many, just whatever data you can provide so that, you know, we as a committee can, you know, justify to the taxpayers if we're questioned, you know, this is why we approved, you know, $224,000 of tax dollars to go towards this entity. And I guess, in my years on this, I've never heard that there was an actual contract. I guess in the future, I would probably ask to see what the
Bring the
contract.
contract? Okay.
See what the contract looks like, and to ensure that we're meeting our obligations that we're signing off on in the contract, both financially and otherwise, so.
Okay.
That's interesting. I thought we just had a good partnership relationship, which we do. I didn't realize there was a legal basis for it behind the scenes, so. Michael?
So, because I think I understand this, but I would love to get confirmation. We contract for 650 hours. You provide significantly more than that. And I'm assuming the expectation is that you'll be reimbursed for any services you provide in excess of the 500, but there's no contractual guarantee of that. And essentially, if the town were to not pay you, you guys are the ones left holding the bag.
Sure, go ahead, Mike.
Sure, Michael Villa, President of the Board of Directors. So you're correct in that 650 hours is the contractual amount, and there's nothing in the agreement that explains what happens at hour 651. What I can tell you about what happens at AYFS is that no one is turned away. And so the total hours that have been provided are more than double that number, and that's simply out of following our mission. And so our hope is to express the need that exists, that is being met, that will continue to be met, and present through the presentation we did prepare what that actual cost starts to look like based on that. And also acknowledging that, yes, these are very tight and difficult times, but there's also a trickle effect that happens during those times that directly affect our community, and they seek out services from AYFS that we're glad to be here to provide to help that happen. So just trying to frame the context of really just about half of our budget annually that's around these counseling requirements, if that helps answer.
The only other, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, just to follow up, so just because I don't have the last, 10 or 15 years, is that growing? I mean, obviously the need is growing, I know that, but like, is the gap growing between the hours contracted and the hours serviced? Have you seen that grow since, say, COVID or even before COVID?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, more need. I have a counselor that's in the schools at least 4 days a week, and like I said, those two items is just part of the contract. We also do other things at Auburn Youth and Family Services in terms of case management services and hooking people up with additional resources. We've helped with housing. We do help people with holiday gifts, clothing. We have a clothing closet. So there's a whole array of services that we do, and we do have numbers and statistics that are in our annual report every year at our annual meeting, and I'd be happy to send you a copy of that, all of you. And also invite you to the annual meeting, which comes up in October. So, yes.
My other question, I know that the counseling hours are only part of the services that are contracted for. Can you explain what the town explicitly requires you to do? Just, I know that you do a lot more than that, but I'm,
Just like,
to understand.
there's,
I don't want to focus too much on the counseling hours because there's
Yeah.
other things too.
you know, there's 500 hours that are spread across all the schools, and in the past years, what we've been doing is to spread it to all the schools so they can, wherever the needs are, those are where the hours would get spent. And so far, all the schools have used some hours, so we're either seeing kids individually or we're doing groups. We do groups in the schools. We have a group after school at Swanson Road right now. We also have done, we've done things like anxiety groups and divorce groups. We did social skills group at Bryn Mawr, and we saw individual students there. In addition to that, I'm trying to, I don't have the contract in front of me. I have it in my folder, but it has other things into it that, you know, that I have to meet with the chief of police and confer with the, you know, with all the principals of the public schools, just to make sure the things that we do, you know, that changes every year to year, and make sure they're relevant. We like to do what the needs of the community are. And there's other reporting requirements in there. What else? Client satisfaction survey, which we have to do every year, that speaks to how satisfied the people that we are seeing. This year, we saw about 70 kids, so, you know, at the schools, either through groups or through individual counseling. And the kids are referred through the guidance department. We work very, very closely with the schools. That doesn't count the people that we're seeing at the agency, which is in hours, too. So,
I thought you knew that's how we did it, was through contract. If I didn't, I actually would have brought my copy of what the contract is, because we've worked under a contract ever since I've been on the Auburn Youth Commission, pretty much.
Patrick, I'm sorry.
As someone who's seen the Auburn Youth and Family Building go up many, many years ago and has been a part of the town, I just, and I think I can help sort of sum up what they're up here for. You know, you put in a facility, and like anything, when it's new in a community, it sort of gets felt out a little, it gets touchy, you know, it's a touch and go, and people sort of know it's there, do they use it, and then time goes by, and then they start to use it, and then the word gets out, and then the word gets out, and they use it, then they get into the schools. And the picture I'm trying to draw is that Auburn Youth and Family Services has actually become very resourceful for this community because it's existed for so long. And what I want to point out is in our prior budget seasons, because of COVID and because of ARPA, when we've had to make some changes to other budgets, the town management has been in a position, because of the regulatory issues that have surrounded the money and how it's spent with ARPA, we were able to utilize some of that money to make up the deficit that you're now coming for. And I'm not surprised that you're looking for more money, because I'm sure that the need and the access is becoming problematic, meaning that, you know, it's probably still growing and at a rate greater than your budget is growing. So I think it's very valid that you're, not that I'm questioning the validity, but it makes a lot of sense that you would present this at this time in the process, meaning over the last 5 or 7 years, because of all of the change with ARPA money going away. They have a lot of other resources and they do get grants, but they have had the ability to garner and gain money in other areas that are drying up. So I appreciate the foreshadow, because that's what I really think you're here today, is you're sending a message like, you know, some of the resources we have are going away, but the need is not. I think the demand is growing, and that's what I got out of your presence here today.
think that's very true, and it's also important to note that the costs associated with delivering them are skyrocketing at a
skyrocketing.
non-parallel level as well, just in order to maintain the staffing that we need, which we're unable to do, and have effectively balanced our budget on the backs of vacancies
Right.
in counseling to try to meet this need. And so, yes, we've been very blessed and responsive, and this town is amazing in its support. We do have an annual appeal where the town comes through every year. This year, we're on track to try to target our $70,000. We're still a little short of that, but that is one thing that we do to try to beef that up, et cetera. But it is definitely a need that the expense and the need are very much both growing continually.
And, go ahead.
We have mandatory health insurance in the state, and which usually contains a mental health component. Are you able to bill any of that to insurance companies?
We're currently not, in the sense that there's a number of additional requirements for the agency to become, you want to talk towards that a little bit about the requirements? Or?
My clinical director was able to bill insurances, which in essence paid for her. We have, in our strategic plan, we have other people in line that are LCSWs that when they get their LICSW, they will probably be able to bill. So that's something that we're looking at closely in the future for future revenue.
But I would think that in sharing that, what you're telling us is that if you have the demand and you bring the person on, all that's doing is really taking care of that particular pool. It's not really contributing to anything beyond. So my point is
That
that
is
if they
true.
get an LICSW and they're able to bill for Medicare, you're using the facility, they're coming in, you've got to pay rent, you've got to, or not rent because they're paying $1, but there's utilities and other variables that impact that individual being serviced by that person who's able to bill Medicare. And I doubt that the Medicare or whatever you're questioning is going to take care of their payroll, their fee, and all of the other things that go along with that counseling. So every time you add an LISCW and you start to service more people because the demand has gone up, the chances are that the reimbursements for that are not going to, they're not going to meet the demand that the expense that's being incurred overall.
It's also incredibly complicated to actually achieve and receive those reimbursements, not to mention the actual costs of administrative, right, the administrative costs associated with running those bills.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, you'd have to hire somebody to do the billing and that kind of stuff, too. We've been fortunate to have a wonderful relationship with our clinical director, who's been there probably 2 less years than I have, so, we're lucky to have stable people. And she's wonderful. She supervises interns. We utilize volunteer interns from local colleges that are getting their counseling degrees or their LMHCs, so we're lucky.
Yeah, definitely.
Any additional questions? We have a motion on this one, or a recommendation on it?
Motion to recommend?
Second.
We have a motion to recommend the town manager's budget for the Auburn Youth Commission of $224,488. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Department of Public Works. Good evening, how are you? Good, thank you. You didn't bring the whole team with you tonight? They all had previous commitments, is that what they said?
I think so, yes.
Did you want to give us, however you're prepared, if you want to give us an overview of the budget, and then we can go by division as we get there for the individual numbers, whichever works best, or whatever you're prepared to present.
Okay, sure, thank you. So in preparing for this, I'm planning on going through division by division, but there's certain changes that I made in the budget that could change multiple divisions at once. So it might look like I'm jumping around a little bit, but it's because there's some major changes that we had made.
Great.
So in general, the wages in the budget were calculated at 2% for bylaw employees. But because we don't have the union contracts negotiated yet, we only funded the additional money that we need for step raises and longevity. So that was basically level funded because of because the contract is unknown. You'll see a change in the clerical line item in several divisions. So we have one individual that we looked at what she did, her responsibilities, and we wanted to redistribute her wages according to how much time she devotes to each division. So she went from 43.75% in the highway, 43.75 in sewer, and 12.5 in golf. And she's moving into 50% in sewer, 25 in parks, and 25 in fleet maintenance. So you'll notice that the amount hasn't changed if you added up the sum for the clerical item, but it's just redistributed differently in the individual divisions. Moving on to the engineering budget, the roadway reconstruction line item was reduced to allow for funding of personnel that's needed in another department. You'll see a reduction in wages in the highway budget. One of those is to move the wages for the skilled craftsman position from highway into the facilities. That's where he belongs, that's where he works. So it helps and provides more transparency. And another larger change is due to the creation of the fleet maintenance division. So you'll see that the fleet maintenance division, it looks a lot different than in years past, just because we reorganized the department to actually form its own division. So you'll see a further reduction in wages in highway because 2 of those employees are now accounted for in fleet, as well as 1 sewer employee that's going to be accounted for in fleet. As far as fleet is concerned, we also increased the uniforms and education line item just to account for those positions. And we also added a line item for the maintenance of the garage that money used to come out of the highway building maintenance. And that just allows our mechanics to make whatever necessary adjustments that they need in their space. One of the larger increase that you'll notice in the highway budget is the yard waste removal line item. This year, we spent.
That's in the highway budget?
That's in the highway budget, yes. I apologize if I'm going too fast.
No, we're trying to keep up. You're good.
So the yard waste removal line item, currently it costs $22,000 for us to process that yard waste. And we do receive $6,000 from Casella as part of the solid waste DDIS contract. So between those 2, we can cover that cost, but it does take that much money to process all that yard waste.
I'm not following you. You're saying there's a $16,000 line item on yard waste removal for the recommendation, but you used the number 27,000.
27,000, what,
I'm trying to follow the increase. The increase is a difference of 6,000. So
So-
I'm lost.
so I think we went from 10,000 to 16,
Yep,
and then it cost us 22 to, like, total.
22 rather. So where's
I
the other
apologize if I,
six?
yes.
Where's the other
The
6?
6 comes from the solid waste contract. Casella, when they pick up the yard waste material from individual houses in the spring and the fall, as part of the contract that was negotiated by DDIS, Casella pays for the processing of that yard waste by, and they pay us for $6,000.
Okay.
I just want to jump in once again.
Sure.
Because I've been going through this. The facilities management budget
Yes.
is definitely not correct.
Okay.
So the facilities manager, there's a new line item for wages, but it looks like it was not added as a set, like an actual line item.
Oh,
Because if you look
The
at
total.
166, 121 was the FY '25 appropriation. It's that same appropriation in the department and fiscal year and town manager recommendation.
you're right.
Those numbers definitely don't add up to what it says it is.
That-
That's off by like at least almost $70,000.
Right, the 67.
Which is obviously going to affect all the total numbers too, so.
That must not have been included in the formula on that. I don't know if we could vote on that, or if that's something that needs to be,
We would have to.
It's a clerical error, so I think we could make an amendment to adjust it, but just, I'm worried that there's going to be
other, yeah.
potential impact on, I mean, definitely potential impact on totals.
76,338 difference.
That's quick.
67,338.
We can keep going over the
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
specifics
no,
of the budget, but I think that we'll have to, someone
That needs
to
to
bring
be-
calculators, make sure that the end total, which is not going to match the 2.3% increase if we're at if that number.
I had noticed that you mentioned the wages from Highway Division being sort of like relocated in a few spots. I couldn't find them, looking at the totals, and
No, I
that's
appreciate that.
definitely part
Thank
of
you.
it. And then, again, I'm sorry to like interrupt you in the middle of this, but is the rest of that chunk that you're expecting have gotten pulled out of highway, is that fleet maintenance?
Yes.
I think it's just that's missing.
Okay.
I have a more generic question. Are these, not just for you, but for the whole book, are these all generated through like an Excel spreadsheet? They're not through an accounting program?
That's correct.
So we could actually have the Excel file.
I'm sorry, ask again?
Could we get an Excel file with all this stuff in it? As opposed to working on paper.
How would you access it, though?
Excel file.
Oh, right, but you'd have to have a laptop or something to access it
I
on.
don't mean here, but I mean,
Oh.
different.
Because of the change in the number?
No, just out of curiosity, just because it's, you know, if you could take last year and this year, you know, like you would, like, you and Dory were talking about changing columns and stuff. Well, you could actually do all the kind of analysis if you had a lot.
Did you want to continue with
Yeah,
some?
I'm sorry for-
No, that's all right.
for
Some
derailing
updates
us.
and,
Sure. So, continuing on with the highway budget, we are requesting an increase in landfill monitoring. We, just to cover additional costs, we need to replace a monitoring well as part of the monitoring, so that consultant fee would go up. The parks budget, the only increase that we have is the education line item, just to allow for training. there's some major changes in the Packagug Golf Course budget as well. And that's to do with wages as well. So we're looking to hire another groundskeeper. We are looking to eliminate the grounds seasonal position and fund a full-time employee. We've been having trouble finding people that will work full-time for a portion of the year, and somebody that's actually skilled enough to be able to do the work and to help our two full-time employees. And it's also going to take a little bit of time for the two employees that are responsible for maintaining the golf course. They come in every single weekend, twice a day, to water the golf course. So it'll give them a little bit more flexibility over the summer when those needs are more critical.
I guess while you're at that one, I'll just ask my question relative to that. So obviously, golf is not, in Auburn is not a 365-day a year event, and I know there's probably equipment maintenance and things that can happen in the off-season. But if that does not fill the 40 hours for adding a new position, are those employees able to be allocated towards other tasks that need to be accomplished within your department?
Absolutely. So they do take their vacations. They schedule a lot more time off during the winter, and I'm grateful for that. But they take time off in the winter. They do maintenance in their equipment, as well as they've helped out facilities. I know that they've helped to paint the town hall. I'm not really sure which rooms, but I think definitely the stairwell. So they fill in when needed, but when they're free with, from their other tasks.
That's why I'm sure that was out there. Thank you.
And the other increase in the golf course budget is for the clubhouse manager. She's been taking on more and more responsibilities every year. She's doing banking, accounting, advertising, just basically running the clubhouse, and she's been doing a tremendous job. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Moving on to sewer, the biggest increase in the sewer division is always the Upper Blackstone assessment. And the remainder of the changes in the budget are relatively minor, and they're due to rising costs of services and materials.
The sewer department did that presentation for the Board of Selectmen. Really, really interesting. But there was that picture he showed of the units that go through the sewer. They found that leak that he said was under a river. So I was curious about, like, how much is that gonna cost to fix? And did you ever calculate, like, we must be paying for the water?
Yes.
That's leaking in the stinker right now?
Right. So that was part of that SSES project, basically looking at prioritizing the sewer system and evaluating it to see where our most vulnerable areas are for the sewer to reduce that inflow and infiltration. So because it's so costly to treat the wastewater, and when you have groundwater filtering in, just so that we can transport it to treat it, it's obviously not effective. It's just a matter of actually finding those leaks. So as bad as it is to see that, we're also excited that, things like this is actually it's going to cost us money to fix it. We're not really sure exactly, how we're going to fix it just yet. Whether we can line it or if we're going to have to replace it altogether. But in the long run, it's going to be better for us financially and the environment as well.
I was curious, because you're because the sewer department is billing how much water they sell. Is there is there like a percentage difference between what gets to, Route 20 versus what we're actually selling as water?
So there's, it's not an exact science. We're definitely assuming less water than, we're billing for less water than what we're sending to the Upper Blackstone because of that unaccounted for water. In addition to that, we have some residences that are on well water, and they still get the sewer. So we use Title V rates to calculate an estimate of how much water is being used. We also encourage people to get water meters just so that, they're only charged for how much they're using. But yeah, because of that INI, we're transporting more water than what we're actually billing for.
Okay, did you want to go through just based on the uncertainty of that one department? Should we just go each one, just go down through engineering, through stormwater in case we have questions? I don't know what the rest of the committee's feelings are on if we get to the end. We should probably, again, to get some confidence in the totals, almost hold off on a recommendation until we do that next week before we look at the warrant articles. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? I mean,
if we're able to come up, I don't know if Karen's doing calculations over there right now, but if she is, and we have.
or if you need more time, and want to
Yeah.
do it next week to actually pull out the spreadsheet and make sure the totals and the percentages are all accurate before we make recommendations on it.
My untrained eye, I think that's the only thing that's missing. I've gone through and sort of looked division by division, but
I think that'd be the pertinent way to go about it, though. I think we
as good
should
as Excel, so.
go through it.
So
Go through it and then.
So with our
look at it.
questions, that way Joanna doesn't need to come
Yeah.
back next
Yeah,
week. We
I
can just
tend to agree.
get confidence in the total and make our recommendations at that point. So I guess we'll start at engineering. And again, some of your budgets are complicated because they come out of different accounts. And if you could sort of just explain that as we go through. But the engineering account, I know you've done a kind of a high-level overview, but as we go through each one, anything you want to point out on engineering relative to that, especially with your notes that you have listed in the below on that?
Yeah, as far as engineering, I think it's relatively straightforward. The only thing that I would like to note is that the sidewalk pedestrian safety was moved to CIP, so that you're not going to see anything on that line item.
So sidewalks have been moved to CIP. That'll be we'll see as a CIP item.
That was like a big select board push, right? Like for
Yes.
dedicated sidewalk improvement, expansion, like fund essentially.
Yes, we have a prioritization plan that was done by CMRPC, so we're looking to follow that. There's 2 projects that are in the design phase at this point, or prior to pre-design phase.
Roadway reconstruction, that's always a topic that people are, this time of year, wondering if their road is going to make the list. Can you just explain how much the 525, what that goes towards, an estimate towards how many linear miles, and, if the list isn't out there, when can people expect to see the list?
So I plan on presenting the list to the Board of Selectmen on the 14th at their next meeting. Just wanted to finalize it. There's a few things that we're trying to balance, what we can do, as well as looking at coordinating with developments. We're looking at one street right now that we'd like to do, but there's a potential development right on it, so I don't really want to reconstruct the road when, we're going to have construction vehicles going back and forth. So in addition to that, honestly, if you drive the roads in the winter, they're all gonna look bad. So now that the frost heaves are dying down, we have a better idea of what it looks like. So we're finalizing that list now, and we're gonna be, like I said, we're planning on presenting that to the board. In the
Your
couple-
predecessor, there was a plan. I know Bill used to always come in every year and say, we're on a X number of year plan to replace every roadway in town. We've fallen off of that schedule a little
We
bit?
have, we used to be able to do about 4 miles. I'm hoping that we can increase, we're getting additional funding from the state, not, keeping up with the inflation, but we are getting some additional funding. So what I'm hoping to do is, we have some money, some Chapter 90 money that we have finalized our previous contracts. So to group that together, we're looking to extend our current contract with PJ Albert, the winning bidder from our 3-year contract. So we're looking to extend that for this spring so they can get going, when we're clear with the weather. And then coming back out in the fall with another list, and hopefully they can, we would have to rebid, so whatever the company that wins the bid could possibly start in the fall to get caught up, but it's not gonna be 4 miles. I used to estimate $65 a linear foot for a road that doesn't have any curbing or sidewalks, and $85 for a road that has sidewalks and drainage. The drainage is always going to be increasing that price tag. Now we're going to about $100 a linear foot and $120 for sidewalks, for a road with sidewalks. So it's
How many miles of road are there in town?
90 accepted,
What was it?
90.
90. Okay.
So even if we could get 4 miles a year,
We're-
it'd be 20 years minimum.
We were aiming for that 20, but
Just a
So you sort of stopped a thought. You said you were doing about 4 miles, and then you said something about Chapter 90 money, but you didn't conclude how many more miles that Chapter 90 would get, or what the goal of 4 to 6, or, because you said we could probably do better than 4, but were you implying that meant that when you got Chapter 90 money
I think we can do better than the 2 that we got last year
out of the Chapter 90?
out of all of our funds. So we were able to get about 2 miles last year, but we still have some,
2.0, and compared to the 4 that we were shooting for?
So
but
you-
we still have, but we didn't account for some of the Chapter 90 money that we were able to get back from, leftover funds from previous years. So when we request a project from the state for Chapter 90, there's a certain amount that we request it for. And then, because our estimates might have been a little bit more conservative, we might not use the total. So we closed out, I think, 2 or 3 projects that gave us an additional 500.
Yeah, I don't know what anybody else's opinions on it, but I think you can, when people talk tax dollars, they they look out their window and they see a road in good condition, and their commute up in their car is a smooth commute to their whatever, street they're gonna get onto, and then their children, they go for a walk in their neighborhood, or their children ride bikes in the neighborhood. That's one of those things that, when you're paying tax dollars, that's what they wanna see. And that's kind of bothersome to me that we were down to 2 miles last year. So we went from a 20-year plan to, in essence, a 45-year plan. I know it's very crude sort of math, but
Right.
that's something I think town administration has to look at to say, how do we, somewhere in capital improvement somewhere, or somehow we get ourselves back on track? Because I think you can grit and bear it for 20 years knowing that you're coming up, but if you're potentially on the 45-year end of the cycle, I don't think there's much of an appetite, and there's going to be increasing frustration across the entire budget as well.
Absolutely. I can say that we just received notice from the state that we are getting about 100,000 from, it's not Chapter 90, but it's for roadway, additional roadway money, and there's a potential for a 3-year commitment from the state to increase Chapter 90 funds as well as commit to a multi-year funding that will allow us to plan a little bit better, a little bit, earlier in the year, because by the time that we get those notes from the state, we're already in the construction season. So it's a battle.
Any other comments or concerns on this one?
I'll just again, back in napkin math, but $100 per square foot, 5,000 square feet, more than that in a mile, $500,000, that's 1 mile in the budget. It sounds like we're only getting another 100,000 from the state. Is that right?
So we have several funding sources for roadway. One of them is the roadway reconstruction money. We also use it's called replace pipes and catch basins, but it's for replacing the stormwater infrastructure as part of that roadway reconstruction. So, like I said, when we have the roadways with the sidewalks, with the drainage, it's more costly, but we also have.
125 per square foot, right?
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, right.
So we have the additional funds that we can use for the stormwater, from the stormwater part of the budget, as well as our CIP funds from highway, which.
And I just want to point out, and I said this months ago, that we're not only paying more per square foot, but the materials that are being used aren't as, we've got, I said we have UPS trucks and FedEx trucks going up and down our streets and Amazon trucks 24/7 in a small little town. And we have a lot of people working from home and children going to school, and our roads are just getting used a lot, and they can only sustain so much before they start to break down. So not only are we talking about the cost, of the 20-year plan now going to 45, but we've also have to recognize the fact that not only the costs are rising, but the usage is going up. And again, they're not moving at the same sequence. So, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on engineering? I think we have.
No, just to clarify, because at the beginning you said that we have one line in red, and I don't see the other lines in red, but the reason why you're pointing out that dropped to 507 is because there's a portion of a salary in there?
Yes.
Right.
There's a salary in a different department that,
So that's really,
Offset.
that road construction really isn't all just material. That 500 is being dropped because of a salary that is getting moved or shared.
so it was
That was my
reduced.
interpretation.
507, I think, went down because they were planning to make an increase to a different line, but that's all material costs, right?
Is all, that's what I'm
So
questioning.
the 507 would go towards the reconstruction of the roads.
That's all material, or all reconstruction, no payroll.
No, that's not going to payroll. It was reduced from 525. The original request was 525, but it went to 507 to fund a position.
Right, so it got decreased to go to a payroll line, not.
Yeah, but there's no payroll in.
No, there isn't, but I'm just saying that, it's important to recognize that we're taking money from something that's already underfunded. I'm not saying it right. We're taking money that's already underfunded to help offset an expense that is non-material related. That's what I'm trying to say. Because in the future, we can get to 27's budget or 28, and we could say, well, how come you dropped it in the prior year? And we'll have to be reminded that we used it to fund another source. That's what I'm trying to,
What was that position again?
Was in that amended
clerical?
town accountant budget, I believe, that the meeting.
right,
I was
the
here.
17,000 that, yeah.
Yes.
But I think she also mentioned that, I guess, down the road, she'd like to be able to give it back. So, okay. Right.
Okay.
I'm not,
Go ahead, Joanne.
sorry. So I'm not sure if I was clear. So there's, in the additional funds from the state, we are looking to get 100,000, which the name of the fund escapes me, but it is towards the roads, in addition to what I mentioned before, the 3-year commitment and increase. So we're potentially getting an additional 300,000. We typically get $600,000 from the state. So we'd be going to about 900, which obviously is not going to keep up with the cost, but it'll help.
Okay, stormwater, anything we want to highlight?
I think it's the only change that I had was the 2% in the wages.
Any questions on stormwater? The highway division?
I think you addressed all the big changes there.
And just if you can explain that the notes for accounts, that some of the stuff is paid from tax levy, some of it's coming out of PAPIS, some of it's coming out of the cemetery revolving. Can you just, there's multiple sources that are funding the superintendent's salary?
Yes, so just, again, for transparency, the salaries for for myself and the division heads, they're listed basically just to see the total that everybody is getting paid. So I'm listed under engineer, and then the highway superintendent and the assistant DPW director are listed under the highway division on that page.
Salt and calcium's in this one, and it's always a question as to how we did, where we stand, how did we do this past year, where do we?
So we are about $120,000 in a deficit currently.
currently. And this one is, do we usually level fund this, correct, and sort of go up and down as we need to for other sources?
I believe this is one of the only areas of the budget where we actually get federal funding. It's one of the only ones that can go negative. Am I correct in that?
Yes, this is the.
Yeah, we can go negative because we get federal back funding after the winter ends. Because you can't go negative.
Karen?
You can go negative because it's one of the ones that's in the Mass General laws that allows
Thank you.
us to
That
go
allows it
over.
to go right.
But there hasn't probably been any federal funding in a while, unless there's a very bad snowstorm or,
Right. Okay, so it's not, you can go negative, but it's not necessarily always, the federal
Reimbursed.
funding is sort of dried up at the moment, is what you've said.
right, it has to be a large event in order for us to be
Large event.
reimbursed from federal and/or state funds.
So my point to the board is that you can go negative, you can't go negative on your budget, but you can go negative on this line and then fix it later. It's like a law. Just because, yeah, okay. And the deficit's 125 now, about 100,000.
It's about 120,000.
Any additional questions on highway? Okay, facilities? You mentioned the changes here were, did you move somebody's staffing wise over? Is that what it was?
Yes, so the item that created the error was the wages went from highway, or intended to go from highway into the facility management.
And facilities seems to be the one division of yours that gets the most standing ovations right around town because of all the projects they successfully complete, and
They're, I mean, they
rightfully
do,
so. I'm not trying to say, rightfully
they-
so, they do great work.
they do a great job and they're inside, so their work is a lot more visible than
Fair.
some of the other people, but they do, deserve all that, the credit.
And you'd say over the years since this has been established and we've had these skilled workers, we've probably saved from going to outside contractors to fix and do repairs, and you would, am I correct in thinking we probably had some significant savings of if we had to contract all the work that they do for us in-house?
The most recent, and I don't know if the board has already heard me say this, but the most recent example that I can provide is, we were trying to get Gleason done faster, so we got quotes for insulation. And our facilities manager quoted, I think it was definitely under $10,000 worth of materials, and we were quoted, I believe, $68,000 for the project. And part of it is, we have our employees, doing the work. When we contract out, we have to pay prevailing wages. And it's not, I don't know if that's, the main reason why, contractors don't want to bid these items, but I know that I've heard from vendors saying that they don't really want to deal with the paperwork. So, I don't know if they're increasing the price because they don't really want to bid on it or because they don't want to pay those wages, but anytime that we mention prevailing wages, that quota price goes up substantially.
And I imagine some of their projects now are preventative stuff that we probably would have pushed off until they were imperative projects. So we could be seeing a greater cost savings down the road.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the facilities management section has grown. We used to have 2 carpenters that were just doing, projects. And we hired, we had to replace Jimmy. I think everybody's heard of Jimmy, but so when we hired the facilities manager, we're also looking at kind of reevaluating that role so that he's looking at the maintenance, not just the physical upkeep, but looking at air filters, that type of thing that might go unnoticed because we're not always in the town hall, so we're not really seeing that. So he's got things like that on the schedule that will prevent major expenses in fixing utilities.
Does prevailing wages apply to any purchase of outside contractors, or is there a dollar limit that you have to hit first, or how does that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Is prevailing wages, for anything the town purchases for a contractor, does a prevailing wage apply? Or is it only a certain?
Anytime a vendor is doing work on town property, we are required to pay prevailing wages, no matter what the dollar amount is.
Anything else on facilities? Fleet?
So that is one of the major changes. We have the fleet division with all the employees included in that section. We did adjust some of the motor vehicle repairs based on the current trends.
So the adjustments on fleet were largely, we did see quite a few transfers, I think, over this past year relative to fleet and increases in cost of parts and things of that nature. Is that why we're seeing the increase here? So
So we're still in that range where we're expecting to end at the end of the year, or we might be on the lower side, but we also, I mean, I'm very excited about our 2 new hires. They've been doing a lot of work. They've been able to get vehicles. They've been very they've been very enthusiastic and they've been finding ways of getting things to work, scrapping, grabbing parts from vehicles that are going to be going out for auction. And so they've been very resourceful.
I'm sure our discussions of, was it last week? 2 weeks? Last week? Did they get back to you relative to our concerns about the large variety of vehicles selected by different departments and the fleet section really not having as much of an input in those decisions so that the maintenance component factors into those decisions? Did that discussion get back to you?
It has not. Historically, it's always been that each department has their CIP and they purchase whatever vehicles that fits their needs, and then we kind of just fix it as needed.
So I think our recommendations, if I didn't hear them clearly, I think we all had sort of weighed in a little bit, was to have those discussions further with town administration was here, the interim town manager was here to further those discussions before purchases are made, because there are different maintenance costs and what may work ideally, may not be the most efficient for the long-term maintenance of a vehicle. Another vehicle may be an option that also meets the needs, but is much more friendly to the maintenance, overall maintenance, long-term maintenance of that particular vehicle.
No, I would definitely, I mean, I know that, Nick has constant communication with police and fire. And I would definitely see, our head mechanic also being a part of those conversations, just because he's going to be responsible for maintaining those.
I think Nick was here when he was here for his transfer. I think he just thought he was here for a quick transfer.
We ambushed.
We did ambush him a little bit. So he's got some information if you guys haven't caught up on that one yet.
To give you the Cliff Notes version, the suggestion was having fleet maintenance be involved in some of those like capital planning decisions in order to like either where the needs are extremely similar, purchase the same vehicle across different departments, or just taking into account maintenance costs, the kind of vehicles you're able to fix in-house versus what would need to go out not for police and fire, because those are huge fleets that are being bought in quantities, I think, where it doesn't really necessarily make sense to be making those decisions. But for like the town hall vehicles, for the fire department, non-fire engines, if we're buying SUVs that need to be able to drive anywhere in town, we already have 50 of them sitting outside the police department. Why are we buying two different versions? Like those questions. So that was the idea. But I'm also not in a position to make these decisions. So
I'm sure that we'll have those conversations in the next few weeks. It's been a busy week, but a couple of weeks.
My only question on maintenance is the software support. Is that an annual 15,000? So
It is.
that's the subscription fee for the software package that's,
That Fleetio package.
I don't know much about software subscriptions, if that seems like that's about where we're software subscriptions at, okay.
We use the same at my company, and it's expensive, but a very good system. For our mechanics, they use Fleetio, you said, right? Yeah, Fleetio is a system we use, and that sounds right for that system.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
No, and we're hoping to see some efficiencies, right? We talked,
Yes.
once all the data gets in there, we'll see the long-term decisions to make, whether vehicles need to be sunsetted and sent out to pasture, or it's worthwhile to invest some money in where those costs are truly going. Okay, great. Anything else on the floor? Yeah.
Just so to clarify, the wages that are in here, those are what came from highway?
Correct.
To fleet maintenance? Okay, thank you.
As well as sewer. There was one sewer employee that came from.
Came from, okay.
And that was the consolidation, right? At one point there, you had mechanics who were in different unions doing mechanics. It was kind of
We had,
that's all
yes.
been sort of realigned.
So we had two mechanics from the highway union, one mechanic from the sewer union. So they were basically doing the same job, working side by side, but they were under two different umbrellas, two different contracts.
So that's, everybody's under the same umbrella at this point. Okay. Any other fleet questions? Parks?
Do we have a reduction in staff for parks? And is that just like, the seasonal line wasn't there last year either? So that's, this line only goes up 6,000 despite the 12,000 coming in from clerical. So it looks like the actual like labor parks is going down. Do we have fewer fewer positions?
We do not have fewer positions. It might be due to the fact that we have a relatively new crew. So, their wages.
Seniority. Okay. That was my only question.
Anything else on parks? Package truck? I know you have some discussion on that relative to the groundskeeper positions. Anything else relative to how those accounts work, or how is I guess overall, how is Package truck doing, and just a summary as to how the course is doing?
Sure. So, we opened last week. I think it was last Tuesday. So you might hear a little bit of a change in policy. I'm not sure if it's already spread, but last year we realized that we lost about $60,000 because of no-shows. And in speaking with other golf courses, a typical policy is to have a credit card on file to book a tee time. And if somebody doesn't show up, we charge them for that tee time. We're asking for 2 hours. If you're gonna be canceling it, call ahead or change that tee time 2 hours ahead of time, and all's good. But we realized as well in conversations with golfers that sometimes people would book multiple tee times because they weren't sure which time that they would be coming for. And now we're holding that, and not just the money lost, but the frustration of other golfers saying, okay, well, there's a twosome there, well, why can't I just join them? So that's a change, hoping that because other golf courses are doing the same thing, or sometimes they have more stringent regulations, that it's not going to be as big of a deal, but we just want to make people accountable. In addition to that, we are looking at some additional programs. Katie, our golf course manager, she is starting up some women's golf leagues. So that, in addition to the possibility of also increasing our opening hours to do twilight golf or glow golf. We can't extend the daylight hours, but maybe if we can use, the glow golf, we can, I think it's more planned on the weekends, but we can, increase our capacity. So we increased the contingency to $100,000 because we're not really sure what materials might be needed. So we might be coming to you for transfers in the future, depending on how those programs go.
I can barely hit a golf ball during the day. I don't know how people are hitting it under semi-darkness, but can you just explain, and it's counterintuitive, but the banking charges expenses line going up is actually a good sign. Can you just explain how that happens?
So we're paying for basically each transaction. So the more transactions and the more money we bring in, the more banking charges that were assessed.
And you mentioned the booking, so how do people book? Is it still a call the phone and they pencil you in, or is there an online component to where people can reserve things? Are we at that stage, or?
So last year, we implemented an online booking, so, and I'm not a golfer, so I haven't tried it myself, but I believe that you can have a login, so you could have your credit card on file. So it's not that cumbersome, but we encourage people to book online, but we'll still take bookings over the phone.
I would almost suggest that we change that from banking charges and expense to processing expense, transaction processing. And I think the reason why is because banking implies that we're paying service charges and fees to a bank for the money, but I think if you put a processing and expense charge in there, it would be easier to make the correlation to the fact that, the expenses are going up because the revenues are going up. I don't know if you can do that, but it's just a suggestion through the chair for future budget presentations.
Probably change that for next year's budget. I'm not sure if we could.
I think part of that is the expense, the word expenses is sort of cut off. I almost think if it just said banking expenses.
But it still says banking charges. They're
Right,
really
right, so-
not banking charges because technically a bank is a merchant. I mean, a credit card is a merchant. It's not technically a bank. And so, if you said merchant expenses. So I'm just saying that when I see bank expense, I think of loans and, we don't call interest bank expense, do we? Whether interest is being paid to a bank or we're getting it from a bank, we call it income or we call it expense, interest expense. We don't call it banking expense. So because the majority of this cost is affiliated with credit cards, I just suggest you get the word banking out of there.
Okay,
That's all. I think adds clarity.
thank you. I don't have that number off the top of my head. The majority of our income comes through credit cards, and we hit over $1 million last year.
So the golf course made money last year.
At $1 million, though, you should be able to negotiate probably a better rate.
No, you can't.
Yeah,
They're all standard.
Yeah, they're all the
rates
same.
are between 2.95 and 3.15 for this stuff. It's pretty standard. You can't beat City Hall.
You can't.
Credit card companies can.
Yeah.
I think you got to call around.
Seasonal passes, do we do those, and do we have a cap? Do we have a certain number, or how does that, do you know how we're doing relative to those passes? Because that's money up front, right? So you're actually taking that money in beginning of the season for the entire season, so that's a good thing for the town, that money is up front as opposed to a little at a time.
I mean, the seasonal passes, it depends on the person. There are people that are there every single day, and they are definitely making out on the deal.
Sure.
But I think it's a benefit to the town. It's a discounted rate for residents, so we're always trying to.
Sure. I think that's any seasonal pass. That's my gym membership. I'm pretty sure the gym made out with that pass, so.
I ask this question every year, and I feel like I probably forget the answer every year, but town owns the golf course. We have an enterprise fund. Can we only use the money that the golf course makes for the golf course? Okay. Just like to have it be out there. We made $1 million, we're only spending 770, but we can't just as much as we might like to.
And we are looking to make improvements on the golf course, so we definitely, those funds are definitely needed. We are working on a bid package for bunkers to replace for the bunkers, as well as golf carts to allow carts to go out there a little bit earlier in the season. So we're looking at making those investments, but some of the investments that we're looking to make will take a lot of time and will take a lot of money. We need to replace the irrigation system and put in drainage, so
Did we purchase golf carts last year? Or was it a lease, or what did we, I remember there was a golf cart discussion last year.
We added 6 golf carts. I believe we have 30 total now.
Is that, was that a purchase, or are we on a rotation so that the carts are,
So I believe it's a purchase, but they would be traded in.
okay,
So I think it's in our CIP to replace them.
okay.
I think Steve has.
Steve, yes.
I just wanted to make a suggestion. Because I bought a credit card machine for the place I work. And, you know, and it was the standard 3%. But they said if you hit a certain percentage, it dropped considerably. So if we don't do $1 million on credit cards, most of it's cash. But it's probably worth making a phone calls. In fact, the same guy will probably give you a better rate if you tell him to leave.
Well, we could definitely look into it, yeah.
Just through the chair, to add to that, is that something that would be done in the accounting office? Because, for example, we have Stripe, and that's why I made, which is, we went through the discussion last week about how Stripe is affiliated, you can't change that. But I'm thinking it might be a more of a fiscal task rather than the DPW. Who owns and operates and is responsible for the credit card usage? Does it go through the accounting department here, or does it, because I know the cards are up there, but the actual banking and the work happens in our accounting department, just to clarify?
Treasurer Collector's Office.
Treasurer Collector's Office, part of accounting, right. So I would think the Treasurer Collector would be the people that would try to make the calls. Would that be a appropriate assessment?
I believe the merchant service is different for the golf course than it is for if you were looking to pay through like the town website for your tax bill or anything like that.
Right, no, and I understand that. That's why I'm asking whoever is managing the bank machines or the credit card machines that are being used at Packagug, which are going through the treasurer receipts, regardless of where the machines are, the receipts are going through the treasurer's office. So somewhere between Packagug and the treasurer's office, there should be a point person who can be in a position of authority to have that kinds of conversations and do that legwork. Or do we develop a subcommittee?
So we have a subcommittee, we have a golf course committee that's advisory in it, and they're more looking at the operations or looking at, improvements or anything like that. The person that has set up our merchant services and implemented the 4UP software is actually the clubhouse manager.
Is the club manager? Well, then if he's the one that brought the credit card machines in and signed the contracts for the use of the machines, then I would think he would be the point person to see, to my peer's point, it wouldn't hurt, maybe at the time that we purchased the machines, we were at $300,000. But if we're going over $1 million in business surplus and that, because sometimes the point, I think, and what I hear Steve saying is you don't know unless you ask. They're not going to give it to you. So I think he makes a viable point.
Yeah, it's worth asking.
Anything else on the golf course? Recreation? Any, same.
Level-funded.
And just for, this is probably the only place we see the words Memorial Day and 4th of July in our overall budget, but there are other costs relative to those events through public safety, and this is, does this include your personnel that work? So that's separate as well.
Correct.
So any of your personnel signed up there for our,
Independence Day, yeah. On Memorial Day, yes. That would, that's not accounted for in the recreation. But it would,
Does this include an assistant or something, because the salary went up quite a bit?
I don't believe so. No, it's just for the director position.
That director position is something that's held by someone who has other duties, correct? Is that
It's shared through, between the recreation and the senior center.
in the senior center? Okay. Questions on this one? Cemetery?
Relatively, I think the only increase is we increased the uniforms line item. I don't believe that there was any other major increases.
Questions on the cemetery account? Sewer?
Do you have any utility contracts? The electricity is going up. Is that a new contract or we don't have that's not in a contracted rate? Or did you negotiate and it goes up $50,000, so I'm just noticing, without looking at some of the other lines, electricity's got a good size bump.
So, electricity is one of those things that we, it's a little.
Sorry, it's level funded. So are we in a current contract with them?
So, as I was saying, the electricity is always kind of in flux just because we get credits for solar power as well. So it is level funded, but it's, I'm not sure. I thought I heard a phone. Sorry. It seems to fluctuate from month to month because of when those credits hit. So a lot of times you'll see us in front of the board in front of the committee for transfers towards the end of the year, and sometimes we don't need those transfers, but those increased costs or the invoices are going up and up and up in the winter. They seem to die off in the spring, but it's always sort of in flux.
Can you just, the Upper Blackstone, obviously that's a big number. Where are we? Is that do we have a contract with Upper Blackstone? Or is it just solely based on?
It's based on a 3-year average of flow that's going to Upper Blackstone, and then we're assessed based on their projected budget and our portion of flow relative to the other communities.
That was gonna be my next part. Do the other communities pay the same rate for flow that we're paying?
Mm-hmm.
And did we have, remember, do we have an agreement with Oxford for their flow to come through our system to get to? And
Correct.
We take in,
We take in Oxford's flow, and it flows through Auburn's system into the Upper Blackstone. So we have an intermunicipal agreement with Oxford, and we're actually going to be meeting with Worcester as well, just because there's some Auburn residents that are tied into the Worcester city sewer system and vice versa. So we're looking to update that agreement as well.
those agreements have a monetary component to them? Is there a benefit for us for allowing?
Yes,
and
so
is there a cost, I guess, if it goes the other way?
yes, we assess Oxford. We do get payment from them. And then,
Is it a contractual agreement?
yes, it's an intermunicipal agreement. So it's
Right,
based
and
on,
how many years into or left, or do you know the length of time with those contracts?
for Oxford, I believe it expires next calendar year.
I'm sorry, for Oxford, it expires when?
I believe it's in 2026, early 2026.
How about Worcester?
I'm not sure, and that's why we are meeting, because that needs to be updated. We've both been searching our records on what has been in, what agreements have been in place. And I have not been able to find anything. We're meeting with them next week to see what they have found. But Worcester, the Worcester part of it is a little bit different just because the finances flowed through the Upper Blackstone. So Worcester would pay Upper Blackstone, and then we would get a check, and vice versa. So we're looking to maybe eliminate, or at least streamline it a little bit more, too.
Question, do we like have a meter somewhere that monitors what comes in from Oxford? That's how that works?
Yes. I'm sorry?
It was a handshake.
No, there's a meter at a manhole right on Route 20.
No, the Worcester agreement, you mean, was a handshake back in the day? Yeah.
I saw one agreement, but that was, I think, well, it might have predated my time here, but my time on this earth.
It was in calligraphy on a piece of,
Parchment.
When you see that it's, it's either written or, I don't know if it was typed.
not quite calligraphy, but it's a little bit dated. It needs to be updated. So that's good. You're recognizing that those agreements need to be updated. Any other questions relative to the sewer accounts?
I believe that's the end of the
That's the end of it.
CIP. We're not voting on it, right?
Well, I think we should do a motion to push this off to the next one.
Motion to table until the next meeting?
Yeah. Second.
We have a motion to table our recommendation till the next meeting, and we have a second. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Obviously, that's just to ensure confidence that the numbers add up correctly. Okay.
On CIP, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, we'll move on to CIP.
CIP, we have a few sections that are covered. The question I have, I know that a few years ago, we bought the 75,000, what, I'm saying this wrong, 75,000 pound truck lift.
Yes.
Is the 40,000 pound truck lift, is that a new purchase or is that a replacement of an existing piece of equipment?
It's a replacement. So the 75,000 pound lift is actually mobile, so it's a little bit a different animal, but
I remember that one. I couldn't remember if we are, I assumed we had something, but I just wasn't sure. And the garage improvements, that's all, I feel like we talked about this last year. It's like electrical improvements, right? Mostly electrical and drainage?
So originally it was to move some overhead doors to make it a little bit more efficient. And looking at how we're operating now, I think that's why I think I changed the wording on that either this year or last, from, I think it was from overhead doors to garage improvements to allow for we're looking to possibly move lifts from the sewer division, from the sewer building over to the highway, so that we can have the mechanics work in one spot, and in general, just make it more efficient for them. But because we have new staff, we're also reevaluating what's going to work for them.
Engineering, the drainage that's listed there, that's the improvement-related drainage? It's under engineering division, 150,000 for drainage.
So yes, that is part of the, we use that as part of the reconstruction roadways as well.
So between the operating budget and then, looks like we have like maybe 3 additional lines. In CIP, there's that drainage, roadway improvements, which is in highway, and sidewalk and pedestrian safety, which is in highway. So there is more there than just what's in the operating budget.
Correct. So we typically award, but our last contract was about $1.3 million.
And go ahead.
So I just based on that, just that, I think that provides some clarity. I don't want us to, we talked about the 45-year plan. I don't want that to be, if that is not even close to accurate, please correct us here.
So
That, you just said we're at 1.2, whatever number of linear feet that comes out to, obviously difference of sidewalk versus non-sidewalk. But where would you say we are in terms of, you said we've fallen below the 20. Where do you think we are? We're not at 45. What's a better number?
I'm looking to reevaluate it just because we can certainly be a little bit more creative in, trying to at least mill and overlay some roads. So, to keep our good roads good, before it goes down to, reconstruction. So, I'm hoping that we can still get back to at least 3 miles, but, I got sticker shock last year when we were paying those prices and kind of panicked because it was looking pretty grim.
And those prices typically, right, for asphalt kind of correlate with fuel, gas, those prices, we see gas and oil prices up, asphalt prices are right there with them, right, because of that's the product.
In fact, we are mandated to put a clause in the contract because we're being funded by Chapter 90. So if fuel prices go up by more than 5%, we have to pay for certain light items, including asphalt. We have to, the price for the asphalt will go up as well, along with the fuel prices. It goes the other way as well, if fuel prices go down. So if we bid out a project at a high fuel price, and then the fuel prices go down, then we make out on the deal. So that actually happened last year.
So there's not a real benefit to going, when fuel prices are low, to going for a longer-term contract to more miles, because there's always going to be that, which works both ways for the vendor and for the municipality, that there's going to be I forget the term in contract world.
Escalation.
Thank you. An escalation. That's why she's the CFO. An escalation cost. Okay, thank you. But yeah, I want to make sure we're not putting out any misinformation, and I apologize. When we were talking numbers, I think we were talking that, that 525,000 number, but seeing there's more here and that you're trying to get us back to that, at least 4 miles. If not more.
And I mean, I know that the priority right now is for the sidewalk reconstruction to create more sidewalks. But hopefully, we'll get to a point where, we're maintaining those and not, we don't have those deficiencies and we don't have those gaps anymore.
But there is a future cost 20 years down the road that now that footage, which was $100 because the road did not have a sidewalk, now is $125 foot cost because we have the sidewalk, which is, there's definitely a benefit to the sidewalks. I mean, I completely concur with the push, the selectmen's push to create more sidewalks, create safer roadways, safer, for the pedestrians, but it's just, there's always a cost. Right.
On the catch basin truck and the 1-ton dump truck, there's an increase on the 1-ton dump truck. It's like the catch basin truck is a completely new this year. CIC
Sorry.
on highway. I'm just
Let me
curious.
just catch up. Yes, the catch basin truck is brand new. So we had a conversation with the CFO and the town manager. Our catch basin truck we're keeping it together, but it's been down much more than it's been operational. We were hoping to be able to use our draft vac truck to clean our catch basins, but we noticed that the grit from the catch basins is damaging the draft vac truck. It was presented to us that it was meant to clean catch basins as well as sewer lines, but it's too expensive of a piece of machinery for us to take that gamble. So, or going back to the catch basin truck and replacing that, it's a priority because we need to clean our catch basins, not just for, the operation of our drainage system, but also as part of our, MS4 permit, our stormwater permits to the APA.
Dump truck cost, did that just go up?
I'm sorry, the dump truck?
On dump with plow? Mm-hmm. 45.
Yes.
Looks like this is the last year for that, but is that,
It reflects the price that we paid for that truck.
okay, got it.
Was saying that, just to clarify, the 45 was a placeholder, the 55 is the actual?
So we have 45 appropriated in FY '25, and we thought that it was going to be 90,000, but when we actually went to purchase the vehicle, it was more than that, so we're adjusting that.
On parks, I'm going to act a little selfish on this question because I spend a lot of my life on these fields. Pappas soccer turf, it is in very rough shape. So I don't know if you know when it was put in. I don't quite remember myself, but I see it's on CIP for next year. The amount of use that it's gotten has vastly increased. It's getting rented a lot more to a lot of outside of town entities and is used pretty much year-round, or, obviously not in the winter, but just wondering the thought process on the replacement in the future. I don't think it can go the amount of years that it did this time. So what kind of cycle would you see on something like that?
So the Pappas complex was built in 2011. And I guess, I think that we're going to have to take a look at, the fields that are being more, being used much more. I unfortunately am not an athlete, but I would imagine that you get a lot more wear and tear with cleats and soccer than you would with the baseball field, but.
Well, I think you have more people using it. There's, almost 600 kids in soccer as opposed to 300 in baseball. So, and there's also more baseball fields than soccer fields. So, I say that because it's becoming dangerous in my opinion.
Okay.
I broke my leg on it personally.
Oh my God. Sorry.
2.5 years ago. So, and it's the amount of turf that comes home with me on a daily basis is a lot. So it's there are unevennesses in it. There's holes in it. Last year there was a hole in it during the middle of the soccer season in the fall. It was repaired, but just when we do replace it, it's obviously not a small cost. I don't think 16 years is going to be enough. Or it's going to be too much time next time. So just a point of, again, I spend probably 5 nights a week at Pappas, so myself was coaching. So just wanted to bring that up, I guess.
Okay.
So that's a good question. So years ago was on the board, the executive board for the Little League, and using the baseball field up there as well, and was very involved with the complex and making some improvements up there with scoreboards and things of that nature. So can you just a little bit on so Pappas has a small revolving account, am I correct? It's not certainly not one that is going to ever cover replacement of the turf on a soccer field or on the baseball field or any other type of improvements. I forget what it was, $80,000-$90,000 maybe.
I'm not sure what the balance is, but I think between we don't charge for town teams.
Right.
So the only money that we take in is for those outside organizations, and that time is limited because it's usually taken up by the town teams. So only those rentals and then what we charge for the lights is going into that account. So I think the intent was to cover the maintenance costs, maybe for, like, for our staff to be able to go there and maintain the fields, but, nowhere near the replacement.
I mean, I've been away from baseball for a couple of years now, but I know it was, 11 years in at that point, 10, 11, and it was, the dugouts were starting to show wear, the bandstand was starting to show wear, there were boards that were starting to rot across the bottom, everything really needed a fresh coat of paint. And I know at the time, I think there was some discussion about the facilities folks, but I think their focus had gone towards Camp Gleason at that given moment. So it's just a consideration to look back at it and then talk about what the, what the plans are for those fields. I think the Pappas family has been very, very generous to the town, and to see things kind of
Right.
needing that attention to that TLC is, I don't think they would really, they would want to see it maintained to the level it should be maintained to. So I don't know. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I would expand on that because as someone who suffered because of the Pappas Field, in all due respect, Lemansky and Gleason and other things that we were very accessible and we used got let go for many years. So I think what we're seeing is Pappas is now going to have to fall in line with the other parks that we have to keep up now, and now that the newness is gone. And I would just caution that, and in as much as I completely agree with having a better, I agree that we have to have a plan. But I also think that it's important to recognize that people are using the track down at Lemansky, the dog park. There is an effort to, I mean, years ago, everybody wasn't happy because Gleason was the place to go to. There was water and a beach, and all of a sudden we just let all that go. So in fairness to someone who's lived here for a long time, we should utilize what we have and stop building new and let the other stuff go. So what I hear you say is a natural problem, but for people that have been living here and paying taxes for a long time, we've just sort of had to go with it because that's, and you're right. In all due respect, the Pappases have given so much to this town. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that we have to figure out a way when we're doing parks and we're doing funding that we're maintaining all of our parks. We can't keep sacrificing something because something else went up. So I'm not taking sides, I'm just pointing out that the plan has to include all the parks because all the parks are being used.
Yeah, and I will compliment Joanna's staff from, the Parks Department. I mean, they are responsive, they do a great job with, how many people are out there maintaining, how many? 3?
5 Parks and employees,
That are dedicated to parks, and we have,
well, so they're dedicated to parks, but they also maintain the Veterans Islands, any town property. So,
I mean, if you had a number of acres that went along that they maintain, it's amazing that they get through just the mowing, never mind some of the improvements. But I agree with you, Patrick, that some of those things, Gleason was, my childhood was a great place to go to. But there, and I think especially now, as times get a little tight, people are going to utilize our parks and
Right,
stuff
exactly.
close to home for recreation more than they would when times are good, when you can, get in the car or jump on a plane and go somewhere. So it's a balance. But I don't really know. We've got a parks committee, right? Elected parks committee.
Parks, Recreation, and Cemetery Committee.
Right, and I don't know what kind of influence and direction they provide relative to that infrastructure, but I think it's having that robust parks and trails and all those things is something that brings people to town and wants them to bring their families to town in addition to the schools, and so I think you do a great job with what you have, but I think, like Patrick said, we have to get maybe a little beyond the, just the day-to-day maintenance and talk about
No, and I think, to the point that you've been making with a lot of the other department heads through the chair, that, if we know that there's a plan when we're looking at these CIPs and we hear that, we're, fixing so that you don't break your leg and the turf is being replaced in a sooner time, but we also know that part of the plan is to do this at Gleason this year and part of Lemansky, it just gives us a better understanding of where are the CIP and budget monies are going to be leading towards, sort of forward-looking, rather than just every year opening up a budget and seeing, the latest and greatest eyesore, because we've realized now that Packagug, which has been so beneficial for the town, town, or Pappas, I should say, not Pappas, it's up in that area. But the Pappas Park has just been something that so many people have enjoyed, probably, I think, now for over almost a decade. And it's hard, time goes by so quickly. And, it is due probably, and is overdue for some repair. But we also don't want to lose the investments that we've made in some of the other fields that have drawn the people in Auburn back to them.
It just kind of led me to where I was going to, on Lemansky and some of the other areas, because there are other open spaces. And I think because Pappas was new, it's been obviously probably overused at this point. I think you could approach some of these in-town youth programs, and they would, I know I'm on the soccer board, and I know the soccer board has talked about turfing their own field or trying to buy land from the town to make their own field that they control. But I think if we got creative as a town and approached some of these youth leagues, whether it's basketball or soccer or baseball, and kind of work together, there could be a collaboration where they could help support some of these costs, maybe not in fees, but through parents. I mean, we have a very robust athletic town, and it's only growing from what I've seen in the 10 years that I've been involved in youth sports. And it's very, very important to the town. If anyone's been in town and saw the backlash that the public school system got over the fees from the soccer program, it was immediate, and it was very, very, there was a lot of anger. So, I think that if we approach it in a better way and we look broad scope across, there are spaces we can use and utilize better to maybe minimize the impact on a Pappas, or, even upgrade a Lemansky, so that there's even more space and it's a little bit less. We have to do this every 15 years, and maybe we get 20 out of Pappas and you get 20 out of Lemansky, and all of a sudden, some of that cost is defrayed through, youth sports, where people are willing to say, all right, well, we have a brand new field, I'll pay another $20 a season to do that, because that can be sold by the boards of these programs that use them the most.
Well, and I'll just jump in. So that was probably the biggest fiscal controversy in town in a long time, was and a lot of it was relative, and correct me if I'm wrong, was the timing, is that youth soccer had already sent out their registrations and had determined their fees and their whole structure of the year, budgeted for the year. And then this additional fee came out of, I don't want to say, I don't know the timing, but it was going to have a significant impact on it. And I guess any of these things, any of these programs, I guess if there was ever an adjustment to be made with any sort of costs, whether it was to increase the fees for the lights at the fields, something of that nature, I think giving those leagues some notice to time to absorb it and to work it into their budget for their upcoming seasons would be, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're correct. And that's the thing. There was a timing of it coming now. Most of the spring seasons I paid for soccer in October of last year. And again, soccer itself hasn't raised its rate in almost 15 years. So to that point, it's one of the most affordable, it is the most affordable sporting program in the town as of now. But I think there are ways that we could raise that rate, and probably you wouldn't affect the town in the way that it was if there was, collaboration, where you probably have never really heard that from the soccer board, but it's something we talk about monthly in our board meetings, about the fields and the conditions and how we can do better, and maybe not use the public schools, because they're already overburdened as well. And that's why they were trying to raise the fees to try and offset some of their costs. And so just,
It is a collaborative, again, forgive me on both these, but, both, at least baseball and soccer, the organizations put a lot of their efforts in. We work collaboratively on the fields and maintaining fields and raking, and, we do our best to work with, collaboratively with your staff, but, there's an effort in.
And I think a couple of weeks ago, when we were working with I don't know if it was the accounting budget through the treasurer, but it was, I think, DDIS. We met with or heard from Brooke, and, we've made a hybrid position as an economic developer. We have a master plan in this town. The dilemma that we face is that we have some really solid boards. We have some really good talent. We've got a lot of energy, and we're bringing up our youth. And I think the master plan, along with an economic development plan, along with other sectors, have to all interact, and that has to be addressed on a global scale. And by global, I'm staying within Auburn, because in all fairness, when, and I do stand corrected. A few weeks ago, I mentioned the wrong bank. So I'm not, I believe I'm not going to say what it is because I made the mistake, but there's a bank going up over in front of Shaw's. And I think that completely goes against everything in this conversation today, because we have a master plan, and we've talked in the trend over the next, decades and beyond, when we're probably, even when I'll be alive, is going to be mixed use. And you're going to have buildings that are going to have retail, and you're going to have condos above them or whatever. There's a lot of effort being put into where is Auburn going to be in the next 20 or 25 years. And the conversation we're having just about this one line item and his dilemma with the fields and all of the CIP, all is going to have a significant impact. We want to spend the money and we want it there, but it would be nice if we were spending it in a way that we know we were investing in the future, instead of just somebody saying, we wish we could have our own soccer field, but somebody else wants their own building to do this. And at the end of the day, I think as a town, to get there, we have to bring some of these together. And I know we're working that way as a town and a community, and I just wanted to recognize that. But I think it's perfect timing to bring an economic development opportunity in, whether it's part-time or not, and also to have the master plan revisited. Some of the things that we're doing, even though they're 5-year plans, I think that the town should be revisiting them every 2 or 2.5 years. We shouldn't be doing a 5-year plan and then picking it up 5 years when it comes time to, like the emergency plan. Usually when you make an emergency plan, you have to go out for 5 years. And our budget says that every year we should revisit that, but we have to really truly update it and submit it to the state every 5 years. But it doesn't mean that we should wait 5 years to go over it. So that's my 2 cents.
We got off pretty good on that one.
Apologies, that was my.
It's always a valid point, and it's, anything else CIP related?
I just wanted to clarify, this, the sewer department is a enterprise account.
Correct.
It seems to me that a lot of the equipment is used between highway and sewer. Is that,
So we have a jet vac truck that was purchased half through sewer, half through tax levy. Yes. Yeah, it actually gets reported to the sewer commissioners as well. The balance of.
Do we have any other questions for the DPW director? No?
So do we have to make a motion? Oh, we don't have to do this. We've already made the motion for the.
We'll do the recommendation for the DPW budget next week.
Oh.
But the CIP, we should, we've got it on our agenda for this evening, so we should.
So can we move now that there's no issue with their CIP portion, it's just their actual budget that we're concerned about.
Correct.
So
We have to
can we
review CIP as a whole.
have to review, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I apologize for the error.
That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Why they pay me the big bucks.
Thank you very much.
Any discussion? So we've got the CIP we've touched upon it with, each department as they've come in. Were there any additional ones you wanted to go over, the CFO? Bless you.
I'll just, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, but it's obvious, looking at the budget, that our CIP went down significantly this year from last year, and even from the original plan for 2026. I know part of that is we've pushed out continuously some HVAC improvements because of the ARPA funding that has, I don't know what's happening with that, but I guess I want to make sure, I guess we're not entirely just kicking the can. I know, obviously, this is a tight year, but I think some of us at least expect that the economy is not going to get a lot better next year. So, I don't know what your thoughts are, Karen. I don't know if this is more of a question for Dory or somebody else, but I have some level of concern about the investment in the town. I mean, this CIP dropped more than 20% from last year and about 10% even from what we had originally budgeted. It's supposed to go up again next year, still lower than last year, but more in line. But I don't know. It just, obviously not having to borrow money is helpful in a bad economy, but there's not really a question here. I'm just a little worried. Like, we talked a lot about roads and how that's what taxpayers expect the roads to be good. We talked about fields and parks and like the services that the town provides. A lot of them are taking care of the assets of the town. And to see a 20% reduction in the capital improvement budget from last year to this year, when overall the budget for the town is going up, it is a concern to me.
Well, just by looking down some of the categories, it does look like the fire is down. But that could also be because of the purchase of the ambulance, it could be how it's structured.
Yeah.
And how many years.
I mostly am just, we've dropped $300,000 out of this year's capital improvement budget. Is that really just because we're pushing off one project and it just happens to be a big one? Or, there's a few line items here that are going. There were enough things that went up that like even the 300,000 drop doesn't feel like it fully captures what's happening. A vehicle we weren't expecting. We have a few costs that went up over the course of the year. Just, yeah, I guess 450,000 was the replacing of the HVAC, which was dropped. I don't know at what point we're going to do that work. Like, it's not in next year's capital improvement budget either.
Well, through the chair, if I could, we have, I think it actually went up from the 1.4 million that's allocated with ARPA funds that is going towards the HVAC for various town buildings. So that's what's covering that big capital cost, the
we are still
ARPA
doing
funds.
that project? It's
Yes,
just-
we are, yes.
And that's kind of like a newbie question. The CIP is money we're putting aside this year based on these numbers, correct? So that when we actually get to 27, 28, 29, we're not borrowing, we already have put the money aside? Is that correct?
Well, this is a combination of different funding sources. So the borrowing we're going to do as the projects are moving along. So we may do some bond anticipation notes and then we might pay those off or we might bond it as we get closer to using the funds. But this 3.1 million is what we expect to expend for these projects.
Fiscal year 2026 spending.
Well, it may not all happen in fiscal year '26. It can go over a period of time till the project is finished.
To that point, I guess, newbie as well. So when you have the 4-year plan, if it, to say Pappas, just because I can understand that, there's 400,000 in CIP over 4 years. Does that mean it's starting in 27 to replace, or you're saving that money to start in 30, fiscal year 30?
Well, I did notice that and I don't know that the DPW director left, but there were, if we went to the parks,
Yeah.
there, you can see in the out years how there is some money that's placeholders in there for replacement on the fields, on a couple of the different, Lemansky and
Yeah,
the
and
Pappas.
Yeah, and Kamasi. I get that, but so is that 100,000 in 27, is that to start the project outlay then? Or are we saving that, say, 200,000 for those 2 fields, starting in 27 to begin projects in 30?
Well, in that case, I'd like to ask the DPW director, because it is listed as a 4-year lease purchase. Just like some of our vehicles are listed, we'll get them in the first year, but then we'll pay them off over the next 4. I'm not sure if it's considered 100,000 each year that we're going to be doing improvements, or if it is going to be putting it aside for a bigger project.
Sorry to interrupt. After the last page of the budget, there are capital justification forms.
Yep.
And some of them are amendments. If you go to the DPW section, it does say, weirdly, it's not addressed until 2030, but the 2030 capital justification for the Parks Department says fourth payment for the replacement of the synthetic turf field.
So we're expecting to
Assuming
replace and then pay this
replace
off.
and then-
Okay. I'm just trying to understand, because that's how I understand capital
Whether that
expenses to
assumption
be
is correct or
done through my business, but I want to make sure that it works the same in the municipalities.
In municipalities, it goes a little different because sometimes it's either they put a, like we've been using the word tonight, place card. So you don't want to get there and then realize something's wrong. So you have a 5 or a 10-year forecast, or they're in between, and you start to, like when the fire and police were here, their vehicles and the fire truck, that you've got maybe you've got a 6-year use on something or a 7-year use. So when you buy it, you go out to your CIP budget and you put down 7 years from now that you're going to want to replace it. Now, something can happen and that 7 years can drop to 5. Or you could be really benefiting because you didn't use it so much and it can push it up. So this is unlike the budgets that we review that are attached to these departments that are their operating budgets. A CIP is meant to be a moving target.
Sure.
It's just so that we don't become surprised because we're looking for major expenses. The CIP is a major one-time expense, where the other expenses in the regular budget are ongoing yearly budget expenses. So what we're doing is we're saying in just the manager's line, we don't want to get to, that's not a good line to use. We want a fleet maintenance. We don't want to get out to fiscal year 29 and find out that, we need another $700,000.
Right.
So we're being warned about it now so that we can, as you go down to the bottom and to Michael's point, normally they're consistent or there's a significant reason to go down. And in this particular case, because we've actually taken something and moved it and addressed it in a different form of different revenue source, you would think, gee, did we move something and are we putting it off because, we're not wanting to fund it at this time? So this is meant to be a moving target.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, this is what I'm trying to understand. Is this a management tool, or is this an actual funding
It's
mechanism?
both. It's both.
So when we collect whatever we collect in taxes, we're gonna put $3 million in this account this year.
So if you look at the bottom,
Right, no, down here, you see all these initials?
so
And if you-
the capital improvement budget that we're going to vote on is $3.165 million.
Right.
Half of that comes out of tax levy. Some of it comes out of enterprise funds, typically the sewer capital, that's going towards sewer. So
Right, but
Yeah.
my point is that
this is not money we're setting aside. It's not like we're putting it in a piggy bank. We're approving this money towards, Well,
plan as opposed to.
we don't approve the plan. The plan is not us. We're approving the expenditure in fiscal year 2026, or at least like the beginning of the expenditure in fiscal year 2026, in accordance with the town's capital improvement plan. As far as I know, we don't, and I'm sorry for just like,
No?
That's what I'm tripping on. and you-
we don't own the capital improvement
Let's-
plan, and we're not. in a
Let's,
position to-
before we go to that, Steve, let's just let the CFO, so that I think she may be able to.
So in the summary of the funding sources, we are actually going to put aside the free cash, the sewer retained earnings, the tax levy. Those are going to be put aside into those specific accounts that we vote them for. And the borrowing, as we borrow them, it'll be put aside into those counts for those projects.
I guess that's what I'm
But only the part that we're voting on this year.
What I'm confused by is the word budget, right, is sort of like a projection. So like I'm going to budget for new tires, like the old budget system where people used to put money in different envelopes for their household. This is for the new tires, this is for the vacation, and you'd put $10 at each one. And then when you got to that point where you wanted to go buy new tires, you pulled out that envelope and you had your $70 or whatever. To me, that's budgeting. If you're borrowing, you're not actually budgeting. This is just a projection of what you're gonna, this is like more of a cash flow projection.
No, these are going to,
Budget.
So just to, the layman's term of the way I understand it, so the CIP allows us to put things beyond different budget years. So some things like a mower, $30,000, that's allotted in the CIP, that's going to be paid in that first year, and it's sort of gone. Something like the truck that we just mentioned tonight, the $45,000 of it was allotted in last year's CIP. So that, in essence, you're right, so it kind of gets put aside. And then when it was going to be scheduled to be delivered this year, they expected it to be 90. They initially only allotted another 45, realized they needed to bump it to 55. So that $90,000 truck ended up being 100. This year, it's paid for out of last year's CIP and this year's CIP. Is that simplification? And then relative to the fields, and I had to look at it several times too. So it looks like the fields will be done in 27, even though we're going to make
Four payments.
four payments
split
over the
the
because
4 years to
it
break
seems
up.
unusual that you're taking something that's rolled out and you're going to run on it for 4 years, but you're still making lease payments on.
It makes sense. I mean, at my job, we have capital expenditures that, again, depending on if we buy a $250,000 truck, it's, we depreciate it, so we capitalize it over 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it may be, to Patrick's point earlier. So I understand that, so.
So I think the CIP allows us to have multiple sources. It allows us to sort of straddle things over multiple budget years because they're larger expenses.
Right, so we're not a business, so we're not going to expense it, and we're not going to get a tax break. We are spending taxpayers' money. That's why I don't, that's what I'm trying to understand. Like, to me, this seems a little bit, like, in the same way, we've got, like, if we know we're gonna spend 10,000, the next 3 years out, the 3 years prior, you should be saving the 10,000. So then when you purchase it, you're paying for it with cash and not picking up 50% in interest.
Do you want to explain municipal rules? I think that's where the CIP is.
I think I can make a simple analysis. So, we have larger CIP issues, a new school, a new fire department. It doesn't make any sense for the town to take and sit on $30 million. It just doesn't make sense. There's just so much you can do with $30 million. And the world of finance has made it so that you have a rate of return or an interest payment on that. So, for example, right now, interest on a car, you can buy a car, to simplify it, for $30,000, and the interest on that might be 3% or 4%. It's worth it to you to go and buy that $30,000 car, and at $60 or $70 or $80 a month for 4 years to pay back $80 to have access to the 30,000, because the dealership's going to be made whole the day you buy the car. But you're going to have to pay back that car payment over a period of time. But at the end of the car payment, after you put down your deposit, you might end up with 30,000. You might only pay $2,000 in interest. And so it's important to understand on the CIP schedules that buildings or other things will appear on them, and they're going to be large, major purchases. And the value of money, the present time value of money, means that you've made a financial decision that says it's better for me and cheaper for me, or I can afford to take $2,000 of taxpayer money over the next 7 years to buy a bus today that's worth 30 or 40,000. You are going to pay some interest. And then what the town does is it actually goes out and gets a premium, and it borrows money, and then it takes a whole group of these things and it buys them all at once.
That's a very good summary of what happens. I'm not sure I agree, but that it's actually fiscally logical.
Right.
But
Okay.
because if you're borrowing 40,000 or 30,000 for your truck, a car is only going to be 4 or 5 years.
Right.
But a building is going to be 20 years, and some of these things are whatever. It doesn't, 'cause all you've done is increase the cost of the purchase.
But you have a
Because
value of
You're going to
that.
pay for it.
But you have a
either way.
value for that because you're able
There
to
is no
build
value.
the.
The money is not a.
No, it's not a financial value. There's other values. There's opportunity costs and you can then put the employees into the fire department and in a couple of years from now, as an example, now they're in a better position with the latest and greatest equipment. They've got their fire trucks, they've got everything, and they can respond and they can do things that are going to make them much more viable to the community because you've given them that new resource.
But that's kind of.
But you're and that's
paying for it.
well, no,
You're comparing the resource to.
no,
what you're
because if
paying
you
for it.
don't
They're not
borrow the
same.
money, you're not going to borrow money for free.
You're not going to borrow, right, that's my point. You're
Right.
not going to borrow money
Right,
for free.
Right, but you also don't want to take $30 million and tie it up at a different interest rate because you're going to have to wait a long time to get $30 million in the banks, and you're never going to get the
We're
fire
not going to
station.
convince Steve. I've talked to Steve about this before.
But I just want to make sure.
I just wanted to be clear. Steve is opposed to fundamentally opposed to the idea of municipalities borrowing money
Okay.
in order to provide the services that they're providing. And so, we could talk about this. I suggest that we don't do it during finance committee because
I'm just
ultimately
trying to
we are not the
understand
body.
what we're voting
Hold
on.
on though. We are not the body that gets to decide whether or not the town borrows money. We are the body that decides whether or not this budget is fiscally responsible. If you don't like the CIP budget, I wholeheartedly encourage you to vote against it. But at the same time, only $1 million of this CIP is being funded through bond proceeds, and that is $1 million that we don't have to come up with today.
But we're going to have to come up with it.
I get it.
That's my
I'm just,
point.
and,
That's my
and,
only point.
and if you would like to go to the select board and pitch a tax increase or an override at town meeting, then that's the way to do it. But I don't think this is the appropriate forum for a
I just wanna make sure-
restructuring of the financial status of the
What I'm
town.
reading and what we're voting
Yeah.
for.
We're
Everything
voting,
else is operational, but this is not in any, I mean, it's a plan, but it's not an operational.
we're only voting on the 2016, we're only voting on the 2016
Right, I
portion
understand
of the.
Right.
So it's in the same way that the fire department knows it's going to have to pay wages in 2027. We don't vote on the 2027 wages until we have to. So we are just voting on the expenses associated with the capital improvement plan for the year 2026. So again, I'm not even saying I disagree with you, but the financial system that we live in,
I'm just
municipalities are going
wondering
to
why we
continue.
don't have a capital improvement budget. So we've done all the work, we know we're going to need, 75,000 or whatever, and whatever, for whatever item.
But we borrow,
28.
we do small borrowings even for operational expenses throughout the course of the year, right?
And I wouldn't, I guess I'll just ask the CFO to clarify that. I wouldn't say we don't have a budget. I would think town management, before they present this for what shows up in the line item, is an alignment with the financial plan, long-term borrowing, a whole host of things to make sure that we're not just throwing a number here and say we're going to borrow. Correct me if I'm wrong. When you come to these decisions, long range and short range that are in the CIP, there is a plan for them.
Right, and as you can see, there's $1.5 million that's coming from tax levy to fund this. So that's part of the whole financial plan. And it does increase by a certain percentage every year. It's just that you can't cover everything that's here. And I actually think that Auburn's in a pretty good position by that, because there's a lot of towns that have a lot more borrowing and don't have a lot built into their budget, but that's what's in there.
I mean, the 8 million we put towards the potential, and the 4 billion we spent towards the land.
Correct.
That's like perfectly, to me, that's the way a town should operate. You should have the cash flow to take advantage of the, whatever the circumstances are. You should have cash flow. But then when the time comes where you actually have to buy something because it broke, you should also still have the cash flow. And that's what I'm saying. We've done all the work to project.
Problem is
out
that
what
we can't,
need.
You can't have it all.
can't publicize the rainy day fund. So
Right.
people who live in town need money to live.
But they're still going to pay one way or the other.
I agree, but they need money to pay today for food and housing and services and transportation, and expecting like people to be willing to put money into a piggy bank that they don't have control over to have some potential services in the future is unrealistic when people live paycheck to paycheck. And like, I won't pretend to understand what the exact demographics of our town are, but if we were to do what you're discussing, we have to raise taxes. And there are a lot of people who, one, just oppose it on principle because raising taxes is always something they're going to oppose, but also literally can't afford on a fixed income the kinds of increases that you're talking about. So while I completely agree with you that it is always better to pay cash than to put it on a credit card because that's just how things work, the reason credit cards exist is because not everyone can afford to do that.
No, it's just because they're very profitable for the banks, as we just saw. That's what.
Andy, did you have a, sorry?
No, I'm good, I'm good, thanks.
Karen, did you have anything before to wrap up CIP?
Make a motion to accept the CIP? Recommend the CIP?
Okay, so we have a motion and a.
Second.
And a second to recommend the town manager's amount for the CIP, $3,165,317. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good, thank you. It's been a long one, so I'm wondering if our number 4, if we'd consider tabling that for our next meeting where we only have to take positions on whatever number of articles. I haven't seen what we're going to have for the future, but any consideration that we move this discussion to,
Well, we have one budget and the warrant article at the next meeting. Is it
just the warrant?
those two items?
Just the warrant article, yes, correct.
I second that. I'll make a motion that we table this for the next meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second to table item number 4, which
Yeah,
was a
for the next
discussion of
meeting.
current finance committee remote participation.
Right.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We had some minutes, if there's no, I think we had some minutes. If there were no questions, no minutes? No minutes, thank you. That was a good start.
Motion.
Adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.